We're halfway through the build on this set of alcoves. We call these classic alcoves. You've got your classic style base cupboards, which means skirting, slightly embellished panel moulding, a moulding to the countertop, and then we have a bookcase that goes on top of that. You'll see that by the time this video is done. I thought that halfway through now, lunchtime would be a good time to stop and do the talk piece on this video. Because although we really specialise in alcoves, we see ourselves as Sheffield's alcove experts, I've not talked in great depth about them on my YouTube channel to the same extent I have for the bigger builds. And I know my followers are very interested in the big builds and how stuff's made, and I'm sure a lot of you, being I think majority makers who follow this, I may be wrong, I'm sure a lot of you make this kind of thing and would love to see some of the methods that we use. So I thought I'd give away a few of our secrets. Now, they're probably not unique secrets. I think a lot of makers arrive at the same methods, because when I look closely at things people post on Instagram, I think, oh, that other person seems to have come to the same conclusion that a roughly 54, 56 millimeter scribe makes sense because it just works out with your 18 millimeter board thicknesses. I always think a picture speaks louder than words, so just showing you how it goes together will make sense of what I'm saying, I think. And we use these inset hinges. That's part of our method that allows us to leave the base cupboard unpainted and know that we can overclad it with everything and leave no edges visible. So I want to talk to you a bit about the method and then show you my typical build process, which will just be a series of photos with a bit of music in. What I'll do that's a bit new in that though is I'm going to overlay the exact time of day that each photo was taken. So right now as I'm talking, we're at about 10 to 1, we're just stopping for a slightly late lunch. We started today at 8 AM, so from 8 AM myself and Jonathan, my apprentice, were sheeting out, setting up the famous MW1000 workbench, getting the tools out of the van, getting the parts in, cutting the carpet, getting the base cupboards in. I usually aim to get the cupboards all done for lunchtime. So this was my side, that's what I consider done. I know then that the bookcase will go on quite quickly because that's all pre-assembled. You just got your 2 scribe strips and your cornice piece across the top, fix it to the wall, and then I know that if at that halfway point of lunchtime we're ready for that, then we won't have a long day. We'll get it done. We've got time for the final checking and touching up and clearing away. So by the way, if you want to just jump to the photos of it being made, then I'll put the time of the video on the screen now that you could jump to do that. But I wanted to talk to my more committed subscribers a little bit more about this whole thing. So the reason I'm giving away a lot of the secrets, and I feel like these are quite hard-won secrets, that literally years of development and refining the process to get us to the point where we can consistently fit and finish a pair of alcoves in a day, because we've front-loaded the whole process, so as much as possible is done in the workshop. You're down to like pre-cutting your cable outlets and all that sort of thing. I've decided to just share it because, well, a couple of reasons. I look back to when I was starting out and I wish that someone would tell me more about how to do stuff. So I get a bit of a kick out of people responding and saying, oh, that's been so helpful, because I make zero money from YouTube currently, although I do intend to change that in future. The other reason I'm sharing it now, having held quite close to my chest some of these details about alcoves up till now on YouTube, is I've kind of fallen out of love of my original grand plan, which was to scale my business to be the specialist in Sheffield and then beyond in alcoves, to employ people, other fitters. The whole plan was I'd systemize this to the point that I could teach it and know that these were done exactly in the right way to the same quality standards and that they were repeatable. I've fallen out of love with that because I just think that it's not really scalable beyond the individual and the small team, the individual being me, who cares about this, designs it, really cares about the fit. Yes, I can get other fitters in, but whenever I've dabbled with that, stuff's gone wrong. And I just don't think there's the profit in this type of work to scale it in the way that I first thought that I would. which is why I think a lot of my competitors just go into kitchens and the big jobs. Because a job like this, you've got 4 meeting edges where you have to scribe to, and the skill and the possible cock-ups are in the scribes. You have a kitchen, you might have a long run of units that you're probably charging out at much higher profit than what you're actually making on making these things bespoke, and then you've only got possibly 2 walls that you're scribing to. So I don't really think that I'm going to be able to scale this in the way that I had thought. But the plan I've got in mind is that I can share it with others, I can help others to grow their business, because a lot of people in my shoes have decided to stay as them, maybe an apprentice, maybe a team of sort of up to 5, which is about where we're at. And they've found that there's a bit of a ceiling where they can't do the crafted bespoke work with the customer interaction that they like and the hands-on crafting that they got into this work for. They can't do that if they scale it bigger and just become a manager. So if you're in that sort of position and wanting to learn more about different methods, then this channel is very much for you. And please give back with what I'm giving away to you. Please give back with comments, because I always learn from comments, and feel free to get in touch directly, as a few people have done. And again, I always benefit from that. And just keep your eyes open. Do subscribe, but there will come a time when I'm seeking to get a bit of financial payback from this, because I can't keep working for free, shooting and editing videos. It does always take longer than I think to edit these up. So I will start to offer more in return, perhaps for some kind of subscription, but I'm not going to say too much about what that might be, because my plans are still shifting and I've got a few projects on the go before I really seriously put that into practice. But be on the lookout, because I will try to give you more value, but in some way trying to recoup some kind of the cost of my time in return for doing that, which I'm sure you'll agree is quite reasonable. So just a little bit more on our Alcove methods. Sorry to keep you in suspense on the build photos, but the whole idea of how we approach these days is it's rooted in my experience of going and designing bespoke for every customer from the start. When I got into this, it was all about design, and I felt I could set myself apart due to my architectural training before I got into joinery. From the very start, I would create drawings like this in front of the customer on the first visit, so they could see exactly what they were getting. And I've done some other YouTube videos about how that works. What I discovered was I would come and offer the world to people, or just say, well, you can have whatever you want, I will bespoke design it and bespoke make it. And in over 90% of the cases for Alcoves, people either wanted what we now call classic, which is what you're looking at, half made, or what we now call modern, which was a simpler base cupboard, either flush doors or just shaker doors without the panel mould on this, and then your chunky shelves. So I thought, well, if that's what people really want after the whole design process, why don't I just come to them and say, well, you've got these 2 options, and then why don't I refine those options to a place of simplicity and repeatability that makes it easier for us to make them, which makes it quicker for the customer, and the quality is more consistent, so everybody wins, and then I've got a higher chance of making profit. So the way the system works over, again, these years of refinement, is we have a basic way of making it, and this half-built classic one gives you an indication of how a modern one would look. So the doors would be just shaker. They wouldn't have this OG panel mould added, and the plinth would finish much as it is here. There's just a piece that's fitted flush to the bottom of the carcass, and then the strips. So this is a pre-finished both sides 56mm strip, and then the system works such that should end up at about 56 as well, so it looks even. They're fitted and they just lap over this, which is set back, which is just an efficiency thing because it's easier to just overlay it onto that. And you've got your side panel, which again just runs flush to the ground. So that would be a modern base cabinet, and then you'd have your countertop with a very simple rounded edge profile. When it goes to classic, we just build it exactly the same way, but with add-ons. So we add the moulding in there, but otherwise the door is constructed in just the same way. We add the classic profile, so that's a stepped round over profile on there. And we add the skirting, which requires what we call a skirting infill. So we still fit the backer thing flush to the unit. We then put an infill piece, which is yet to go on here, so that the skirting can fit, and there's a flush backer with the side scribes. So that's the system to reduce confusion in the workshop. Because as I started to take staff on, and my first member of staff, I just found I needed to keep things fairly simple for him. He was skilled in many ways, but it just tended to create fewer mistakes if there was a standard method. So the whole Alcove system came from there, a standard method with add-ons with an upgrade price for the classic variation. Now you can see my pricing, which is another part of the system. I itemized the pricing. You can see that at sheffieldalcovestorage.com, and the prices on there at the time of making this video in May 2019, the prices on there have been the same for quite some years. So I set them a while back. I tracked our time. I figured out an allowance for in case like the chimney breast is rough brickwork and the scribing is going to take longer. I just set a price for everything, knowing there was a little bit of leeway in that to make profit. And customers love it because they can see what costs what, and they can say, okay, maybe I'll have one less chunky shelf to keep the price down. But there's very little haggling on the price because the price list has a lot of credibility. So the prices that are on that link at the time of making this video, if they haven't been updated, which they may do soon, have been the same for years, going back to before I was VAT registered, before I had so many staff. And in those intervening years, I've made a lot of quality improvements. So we've gone from MDF, internal base cabinet, as standard, to birch plywood, except the back panel is still MDF. And the reason for that was partly the perceived quality and the smell of wood as you open the door, but also the holding power of the screws that hold the hinges. We had issues with the brown cheap MDF we were using, not holding the screws as well as I wanted. So we made that upgrade. As you'll know from watching the channel, you'll know we've upgraded to the spray painted finish, which costs more, but then it's faster to apply. But to make it faster to apply, we invested about $3,000 in a air-assisted airless machine. And there are other just constant gradual improvements which we're still making to the whole system in terms of the quality of materials and the installation process. But we've kept that price the same, and we sort of absorbed the VAT and the birch ply cost. I just made that decision because we were always getting more efficient. It kind of made sense, but I was very wary of upping the price because for a long time we've been told we're very much at the upper limit of the quotes that people are getting. And for this one, for example, what did I charge? I charged, I think about $2,500, and the customer got a quote from someone else for $1,700. But she liked what we do and the service she knew she would get, and she came back to us, which does happen a lot. But I still feel like, well, if we're that much more than everybody else, then I don't feel we can easily up it again. Maybe we can. There's always a different market you can get into. But again, that's a reason why I'm just struggling to see the profit in scaling this beyond myself and having to pay a significant fee to a fitter, because I need a very skilled, devoted fitter. And then if we were churning more of these through per week, per month, then one little mistake can have such a knock-on effect. We could then be just running ourselves ragged, trying to make the whole thing pay. And talking to other makers, that is the conclusion a lot of people have come to, that it's very difficult to make any more profit scaling up and taking on staff. You tend to have a lot more hassle for just as much or less profit, and you can end up sort of chasing a dream that never quite comes. So that's where I'm at with all this. I think that's about all I wanted to say. I've talked for quite a while now, so I will end this with the fit that's happened before I'm talking now, and then just running on into the end of the day when you should see some lovely fully finished bookcases, and I will tag the time at which every photo was taken so you can see the speed that we managed to get these installed. It's now 7 o'clock, pretty much spot on. So that's an 11-hour day, not quite the short normal day that I was hoping for. That's down to a couple of fairly significant mistakes that had to be rectified. I can't count the number of times I've said it would have been a normal day if we hadn't had mistakes, and next time it'll be a good one-day fit, because mistakes are something that you just have to account for. That's what I've learned. And it's not the making of mistakes, it's the fixing of them. I'm not going to go into much detail about what they are, but if you don't notice anything wrong, then we've done our job right, and we have fixed it to the point of invisibility. So this is the finished result. Two classic alcoves, a little bit non-standard in that they're taller than we normally do them. We discussed with the customer going to the ceiling, and my advice was to stop just a bit short, because I find that it invariably cracks if you try to cork up to the ceiling and then load it down with books. You may notice that the skirting height on this one is somewhat higher than the other. That's because the floor slopes by it's about 35 millimeters. So using a laser level and in discussion with the customer, we agreed to keep everything level, let the disparities show at the skirting height, but that meant that the gap, the fairly small gap to the ceiling, would end up near enough even. So that's the decision that we took. One other non-standard feature to mention here is a wider scribe panel here, which just allows the door to open a bit further than it would have done if we'd kept a normal width scribe there. Well, it's been quite a long video, so I won't talk much more, but I hope that's been interesting to you, and do comment below if you've got any questions or you want to share your experience or how you make this sort of project. Thanks for watching.